We have no financial disclosures regarding the matter presented in this video. Iatrogenic ectasia is the most dreaded complication post-refractive surgery. To ensure safer surgery, we need to understand the various modes and moods of its presentation. Current practice protocols rely primarily on topography as a screening tool. While every topographer has its own set of indices, the use of concepts of residual bed thickness, percentage tissue ablation, and the BAD-D maps have gained widespread acceptance. Randleman and group published the ectasia risk scoring system that takes into account 5 parameters to segregate patients into high risk and low risk categories. Recent advances suggest that corneal biomechanical changes precede the appearance of topographic findings. Thus, biomechanical properties must be taken into account before choosing between surgical options. There have also been various published case reports on the appearance of ectasia in women during pregnancy or the period of lactation. But are our current tools sensitive enough? Choosing to operate in a case of suspicious topography comes with an inherent risk, but the possibility that a normal appearing topography could lead to ectasia unexpectedly is every refractive surgeon's nightmare. We have already published a case series where we compared patients of post-LASIK ectasia with age-matched controls. On in vivo confocal microscopy, we found that our control cohort patients had normal nerve regeneration, while patients of ectasia showed poor nerve regeneration, reduced interneuronal connections, and increased dendritic cell density. The dendritic cell density increase was statistically significant and correlated with higher OSDI scores. We also analyzed the tear samples from these patients and found raised inflammatory cytokines. Let's take a case example of a patient diagnosed as post-LASIK regression who presented to us with severe glare and contact lens intolerance. Her topography showed a centered ablation with good pachymetry, and she had been advised to undergo recorrection to reduce contact lens dependence. We decided to first study her aberrometry and could not find any disturbance of the internal optics. So why did she have glare and inability to tolerate contact lenses? We then asked the patient to fill out a self-assessment questionnaire and she scored a 76 out of 100 on the OSDI. Next, we performed on the patient the optical quality analysis system test, which provides us with an objective assessment of the ocular surface health. Her objective scatter index was also above normal range, leading us to a diagnosis of dysfunctional tear syndrome. Confocal microscopy confirmed our findings. A closer look at her topography made us suspect if perhaps we were dealing with an early ectasia instead. So do you still want to relift and recorrect this patient with the now known risk of worsened symptoms, increased glare, and maybe even triggering an ectasia? The answer would be an obvious no. We would instead advise conservative management to control the subclinical inflammation while observing her closely for any evidence of progression. Let's discuss another case example. A 26-year-old lady had presented to us demanding refractive surgery. Her topography and biomechanical profile were within normal limits and she cleared all our preoperative checks. We went ahead with SMILE surgery in 2015 and perioperative period was uneventful. 2 years later, she presented to us with a regression in her left eye. We decided to be cautious and observed her for 6 months, which was crucial as she developed an ectasia in this interval. Remembering our newfound wisdom, we ran tests on her to rule out inflammation and poor nerve regeneration. But in her case, both the parameters were normal. We were now in a conundrum. What could we do next? At our center, we follow the principle of not discarding any patient's sample. For this patient too, the extracted SMILE lenticule had not been discarded, but instead transported to our research laboratory where it was stored in a biorepository. We went back and retrieved this patient's sample and process the same to look for gene expression of important proteins. To our amazement, we found low levels of lysyl oxidase and collagen 1A. The expression of these markers were lower in the ectatic eye when compared to the contralateral eye, while both eyes showed lower levels than the analyzed lenticule of an age-matched control. While collagen 1A is a major type of collagen found in the cornea, from our previous work in keratoconus patients, we knew that LOX plays an important role as an endogenous cross-linker. We conducted an experiment at our lab where cells expressing LOX were laid on a collagen matrix gel. 48 hours later, the collagen matrix showed contraction, while in the case of cells with overexpressed LOX genes, excessive gel shrinkage was seen, thus confirming the role of LOX as an endogenous cross-linker. Thus, putting the pieces of the puzzle together, we hypothesized that the lower levels of LOX and collagen led to an abnormal healing response post-surgery, which led to an ectasia in this genetically predisposed patient. Thus, besides the modes of pathogenesis already known to exist, we found that poor nerve regeneration, subclinical inflammation, and low levels of LOX can also trigger ectasia in patients with seemingly normal topography. But knowing is not always the same as applying. We have now modified our protocols to additionally look for hormonal imbalances, contributory family history, and subclinical inflammation prior to surgery. In the future, we hope to have a point-of-care diagnostic kit that would detect gene expression markers and inflammatory cytokines in the clinic. But we still worry if this will be enough. The future demands more dedicated protocols that take into account not only topography but also the complex interplay between biomarkers, imaging and predictive modeling, and genetic factors, as well as the use of artificial intelligence to achieve true prediction and control of our surgical outcomes. Then and only then will refractive surgery be safe for every patient.